I'm good. How are you?
I'm not good, but
You're
I'm good.
not?
But I'm good.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I hope we can talk, and I hope this chat will brighten things up a little, get some burdens off your shoulders. It's always good to chat. So thank you, Ryan. First of all, Ryan is a new friend that I reached out to because I found his story and his life experience very interesting. And with further ado, I will let you take the live chat and just chat. The point of this is to really just invite you guys to have this conversation, a safe place, safe space, and like friends. So I'm really excited to hear what you got to say. Thanks, Ryan. Thank you so much for joining again.
Of course.
So why don't you talk about like how, well, your experience, and who you are and your experience as a Black and Asian in America.
That my name is Ryan Alexander Holmes. Pleased to meet everybody in here. I am Black and Chinese.
Hey.
I'm from San Marino, California,
Mm.
which is, a conservative neighborhood of probably like 60% Asian and 40% white and 0%
Mm-hmm.
Black, except for
Mm.
me and my brother.
Mm.
Um, and that's the basics of who I am. Also, if y'all got any questions up in here, like
Yes.
ask them.
Yeah, you guys come up with questions. That's a good reminder. So, the reason also to ask about your experience growing up Black and Asian, Chinese, is because the greater kind of concept of this is to bring both communities together. I was mentioning to you earlier off live stream that the point is to really invite everybody to see what it's like personally from your experience, which is a great example of both cultures, the Asian American community and the Black community, and how this merges in your life. And kind of in a literal sense, my greatest hope is that more of the Asian American community can really embrace this movement as well because it's a great movement.
Well,
The Black community has,
yeah.
yeah.
Why aren't they embracing it?
Why aren't they embracing it?
That's the
That's a
question.
good question, and I think the reason has a lot to do with culture, tradition, racism, ideologies, and prejudices from my personal upbringing too that I have came to be more aware of and undoing. I think when you're talking about immigrant parents culturally, sometimes if they're born in Asia, in China or Hong Kong, they're not used to diversity. It's not an excuse. It could be an explanation, And so coming here, I think even for my parents' culture, it was a very harsh culture uh, growing up into a new environment where they had to know the language, and fend for themselves ground up. And I think when you're kind of the immigrant that comes here back then, I do believe there was a lot more racism. I mean, there's racism in general. We have inherent racism within ourselves, but I do think our parents had a more bitter experience. From my personal experience as an Asian child of immigrant parents,
Mm.
like that, it's that pyramid. What is that pyramid thing? It's like your experience. If you're on the bottom level of the pyramid, you're fighting just to survive. You know, and
Talking
then
about
we're
you're talking about the racial hierarchy that was constructed in America by the system that we live in. Is you talking about that?
that the systematic racism that I've learned, yes, that
Mhm.
too. That is another one. The system that's placed here that I've been woke personally um, from all of this and very understanding of this now. So, would you like to talk about your experience as, you know, being of both heritages, and how was it like, with your parents? What did your dad teach you versus what your mom taught you?
I think I had a lot of experiences in my neighborhood. Some of my first racist experiences were both from white people and also
Mm,
from Asian people, right? Because there is anti-blackness in the Asian community, whether the Asian community wants to, admit that or not, it's there.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
Um, and we can't dance around that issue, you
right.
know? We can't dance around it. We have to admit it, and we have to
Yeah.
understand where it comes from and talk about it
Mm-hmm.
openly. You know what I mean?
Yes, for sure.
Because it's inherent. Because anti-blackness is no one's immune to it.
Mm-hmm.
All POC, even black people, it's inherent in them. From their experiences. Um, so I say all that to say, like, if this is a conversation, what has your experience been in your age community? What have you experienced
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to
So,
that,
uh,
especially in
uh-huh.
these times talking about Black Lives Matter?
Mm-hmm. So, for my experience, there's, I would say, different communities. So, I would say for the younger, personally, younger Asian Americans, I do see that there has been more of an awareness and a more of an awakening, if you will, to be like, hey, this is not right, anti-blackness and racism and the systematic racism that is still a lot of people are not aware of is not right. So I do see in media, different media outlets, Next Shark, Asians Never Die, even in these huge groups, Asian media groups, Asian Creative Network, Subtle Cancel Asian Facebook groups that are encouraging hundreds and thousands of followers saying, hey, we're an Asian community. We need to do what's right. Whether it's owning up to Tao, what I believe the Asian cop that was
Hotel,
in
his mom.
Total.
Yeah.
Yes, the Hmong cop that was involved in the unfortunate killing of George Floyd, which I've learned too, as any advocate or activist that's going through this, we have to own up the good, the bad, the ugly. And I was very humbled by this. And so I think for the younger generations and the generations younger, we are definitely being more woke and we're putting it out there. That's why I'm doing this. I want to post, I want to have these conversations with people like you so
Mhm.
that we can. That's the first thing, is having the conversation. People are already out there making changes in their company, but I believe I can't speak for everybody in the Asian community. I'm always worried about being politically correct. Is that, the first thing that we can do is having these conversations. And trust me, I've struggled with trying to open up these conversations at home because they're so um, ingrained in what they believe in, especially my strict Asian parents,
Yeah.
that the whole idea of, you know, um, what media portrays even. And I blame media too, blonde hair, blue eyes has always been a beauty. I grew up thinking I was ugly, that I could never go into Hollywood because that I was Asian, and that's what is systematic racism too in the industry, so um, I've cried about it. I've tried to talk with my parents about it, and sometimes I can't speak for everyone's family, like everyone's culture in the Asian community. There's even divisions within the Asian, you know, community of there's East Asians, Southeast Asians, there's a lot of work to be done. And but I will say it does take, I mean, for me to even be in film as an Asian, we had this talk about how much of the struggle it is to fight these stereotypes within our own families, Asian, and you would, I hope, I don't know if you experience this with your own mother who is Asian. So my mom is very against, me going into film, creatives. What does that mean? Our struggle as an immigrant, we worked hard. You want to, you know, throw that education away. But to me, I know this is more than just being in front of the film. and the camera. It's being able to represent, it's being able to call out, you know, racism, it's being able to be represented behind the writer's room, it's being able to be paid. Geez, Bruce Lee, I don't know if you saw the documentary. Bruce Lee, his daughter Shannon Lee recently came out with a documentary that really spoke out for her father, not in the voice and the narrative of Tarantino, who totally portrayed him in a very negative light. And that's what happens when there isn't representation. You know, we say like, oh yes, Asians, it's great that, you know, we're successful, but I do believe there is more representation within the Black community overall in different industries. You know, you guys have a presence, whereas Asians, it's like, that's why I always go back to Crazy Rich Asians. You know, 5 years ago, I feel like I'm talking more about myself. It's supposed to be about you. 5 years ago, 5 years ago, um, when I had first started in acting, I had dropped everything. You know, like I remember these teachers would tell me like, you won't make it in Hollywood unless you know how to speak in a Chinese accent, in a Chinese accent. I'm like, are you serious? Like, you're telling, this was 5 years ago. And
Yeah.
then Crazy Rich Asians came out 3 years ago, directed by John Chu, who's amazing. I look up to him as well. You know, but yeah, anyways, you know what? This is enough about me because I really want to share
Well,
this
no, I mean, this is what you're
soapbox with
saying
you.
is really important because, you know, you might say that like, oh, you know, Black people have more of a representation, and that may be true. But how are we represented? You know, because the way that we've been
Mm,
represented in the media and entertainment and how that's gone national and international has
mm-hmm,
has created an image of us that is perpetuated anti-Blackness throughout the world. It's perpetuated
mm-hmm.
anti-Blackness in Asian countries. That
Yep.
people living in Asian countries, all the images that they see of Black people have been primarily criminals, gangsters. You know, gang culture has been, you know, uplifted and preached about and spread everywhere, and that's what people think Black is, and that's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily the case. You know, it's misinforming the world of who we are, and
Totally
that's a
agreed.
problem. That's a
That's a
problem.
narrative that's painted wrong. And we have to go back to that question as to who is writing these narratives, who
Exactly.
is, and who is it? Is people that are
People that are
not,
white, just say it.
yep,
They're white.
Caucasian experience, white.
White. Hollywood is
Um,
white. Everything is white.
yeah.
Everything. Everything that is
So,
controlled is white. And that's just the
yeah,
truth. That's why
it
they
is the
want you to
cold
speak
hard.
with a Chinese accent. That's why they
Yeah.
want, you know, to appropriate Chinese culture in a way. You know, that's
Mm-hmm.
why Adele Lim, you know, had to have a white writer with her when she wrote Crazy
Yeah.
Rich Asians and didn't get
Mm-hmm.
paid more than that writer.
Oh, yeah. That's why she's not doing the second sequel.
Yeah, so like let's talk about, you know, the reality of it. Like that's what the reality is that we are
That,
living in a system that is not for us. It was
mm-hmm.
created by our founding fathers that we praise so much. They were all slave owners. They are
Mm-hmm.
white, rich, elite slave owners, right? They created this system and
Mm-hmm.
founded this country. And the system is working. The system is doing exactly what the system needs to do to uplift and keep white elites in power, specifically white men that are rich. So like that's what we're fighting against every day, and it's in every aspect of our society in America. It's in entertainment. It's in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the financial sector. It's in you know, the medical field. It's in
Yep.
every fabric of our society. Period. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like fresh off the boat. Yeah, like
Yep. Fresh off
in
the
like
Camille.
what was fresh off the boat. I watched that and I was like, what is this? Like, I mean, I'm glad that Chinese people, you know, Asian people are getting their representation, but it's like, okay, this is our representation through a white
Yep.
lens. You know, what's
Right.
acceptable through a white lens, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why Black Panther hit me so hard, and I was like
That was a good
sobbing throughout
movie.
the whole movie because,
Yeah.
you know, usually in those narratives, there's so many stereotypes. But
Yep.
in Black Panther, we debunked all those stereotypes and we
Yep.
didn't need a white man to save us.
Yeah. Well,
We were
Asians
the
go through the
hero.
same thing. I mean, did you hear about what happened to the original Mulan? So original live action Mulan, there was controversy too. Of originally they were going to have the Shang, who is the male Asian love
Yes.
of, they were going to have him as a white male. And
Come
this
on.
was a,
Like,
I remember, yeah.
yes. Like, what the hell is that? It's it's
Mm-hmm.
it's baffling. Excuse me. It's baffling that they even think they can do that still. What
Yep.
planet are these executives living on? They must not have any proximity to people of color. They must be in
Right.
a bubble where there is just no, that is just completely devoid of color for them to even suggest some stupid, idiotic stuff like that.
It
You
is
know?
definitely for sure a system. I have been woke, but the problem, like you said now, is how do we actively, hopefully, I feel like this will take some time. One, it has to take the person in power to be open to this idea.
Well, no,
And two, or it's creating our own.
for me, it's like, you know, it's multifaceted, right? It's everyone needs to
Mm.
educate themselves. We are not educated. We think we're educated by these institutions, but we're
Or is
not.
it
They don't teach
fear?
us
Is
our
it
history.
fear that, yeah, that I
They don't
believe.
teach us
I
our
believe.
history. They
Yes,
don't
I
teach us our
believe.
history. They don't
No, I
teach
feel
us
cheated for sure.
Chinese American history. They don't
Yep.
teach us
No.
Black history.
Yeah.
They don't teach us
Mm-hmm.
the white atrocities
Yeah.
committed onto people of color. So
Yep.
of course when we and white people don't learn their history because they don't learn Black history. They don't learn Asian
Yeah.
history. They don't learn
Yeah.
POC history. They don't even learn their ancestors' savage history and genocide and
Mm-hmm.
racism, rampant racism that their
Yeah.
ancestors have done to us. And if they did, that would change how we all think. So it starts with education.
It does
It
start
starts
with
with education.
education.
But
It
why
definitely
is our
does.
educational system like that? That is the question. You know,
There's a
how can you
system.
erase these people's? How can you erase people of color's history and sort of uplift white history in a way that like champions, white people?
Mm-hmm.
Why was the only thing that I learned in my school about slavery, Abraham Lincoln was a hero? Why does that?
Yep.
Why is that the thing I walk away with from that
Right.
experience? I didn't learn any of the heroes, the slave heroes who fought in the Civil War for their
Right.
freedom. I learned a bunch of
Yeah.
white generals that were in the Union, but they didn't talk about the Black soldiers that fought
Mm-hmm.
for their freedom. And that's a problem, you know?
That is a problem. I actually realized this too, is how cheated we are in the education system. Everything that I've learned, the little that I know of the Black Lives Matter movement connected to civil rights movement, is because I had to fish for this myself online and find multiple sources, as an adult, right now. And you have every right, and we have every right, as me, even myself, I remember just feeling so like, oh my gosh, like almost cheated from this Asian American identity. It's so weird. There was a recent documentary that was beautifully created by PBS for the Asian American history. And I even tweeted about how I felt like I've learned more in this 4 hour PBS documentary about Asian Americans than I've ever
Exactly.
learned, and
Exactly.
I felt
That's what I'm talking
so.
about.
And
That's
these are
exactly what I'm talking
voices
about.
from the Asian community. Like, I didn't know who Vincent Chin was. Vincent Chin was
Exactly.
murdered in 1980s or 1970s. They're having a remembrance on June 23rd of his death.
You're
I didn't
talking about
know.
in Detroit, right? You're talking about in Detroit.
Yeah,
It
he was
was murdered
murdered.
by those two white racist men,
Yep,
right?
because
Yes.
they thought he was Japanese, but he was Chinese, and he
because
was about to
because
get married.
they were like,
Or
you're
anything.
taking over our country, you're taking over our industry with
Mechanics,
your
yeah,
cars.
in cars, yeah. And I learned, so it was I was woke, with
But
this
imagine,
whole.
but also, I have to say this too, is that like we can't not forget how Black activists came together with
Mhm.
Asian activists to stand
Solidarity,
up for that,
yes,
to stand up
yeah,
for Vincent Chin, because
yeah.
they didn't
There
have.
was a lot of that.
You know what I mean? There was. So we need
Yeah,
to also remember that because that's not in the history books either. And that's
that's
also
not.
what contributes to the anti-Blackness in the Asian community and also the
Mhm.
separation between those two communities. And I
Mhm.
say that too because like I'm gonna keep going back to education
Yeah,
because
go back.
when we don't learn our history, when you say like, shit, I learned more in this PBS documentary than I did in school. You have to understand that that is by design. It is
Mm-hmm.
by design
It's
to
so
keep us
sad.
separate.
It's
It is
really
by
sad.
design to keep us separate. I don't have beef with Latinos. I don't have beef
Mm-hmm.
with other people of color. Where did that come from? You know, it's from our the it's from our education system and how. Yes, Jackson stood with us. Yes, or stood with, yeah, Vincent Chin.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but that's where it comes from. So that needs to be a centerpiece of
Mm-hmm.
every discussion, because I mean, you look at the African American community too. It's just like people look at the Black community like, oh my God, how could they look at their what are they doing over there? They're poor, they're uneducated. It's like, well, if you actually knew your
The
history, you
system.
understand
Mm-hmm.
why they're there.
They were
And
oppressed
also
systematically.
to look at them like that, to look at anybody like that and not be like, oh shit, there's a problem. We need to work together to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
But instead to look at that and be like, oh, let's stay away from that. They're criminals. They're no, we don't
Mm-hmm.
no. Give them the resources that they need, because they are Americans. We are Americans just like everybody else. And if we learn the system, we'd understand that why they're there, why we are there as a people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I say that too because the model minority myth pins
Yes,
pins Asians against Black people.
it
It
does.
makes it forms this fake hierarchy from the
Mm-hmm.
top down. That people, the white power structure, puppeteers. It's like, well, let's uplift
Right.
these Asians so that we can say like, look, these Asian immigrants made it. These people of color made it. Why can't you make it? And it's like, that is so ignorant,
Right.
because the majority of the Asians that came to this country came after the Immigration Act of 1965, where
Mm-hmm.
Americans literally recruited and rewarded, Asians that were highly qualified with
Right.
visas and citizenship,
Yeah, they were
green cards.
selecting, handpicking
Exactly.
the best of the
So
best.
yeah, the best of the
And
best.
mm-hmm.
So how can Black people who are coming up from slavery and Jim Crow and segregation and disenfranchisement and redlining, how can they compete with people who are coming in with education and high profile, can
Right.
immediately join the workforce at a high level, you know? And
Mm-hmm.
that history was never taught to us
It
because they
wasn't.
did it on purpose. They want us to fight with each other.
Yeah, I didn't even
But
know about the whole model minority myth until maybe post college. I've read a little bit about it, but I see people still doing that today. Using that model minority myth. I've seen it. People post about Twitter like, oh, why can't you know the Black community work hard, and some people believe that still. It's crazy. I know.
too many
It
people,
is sad. Too
too
many
many
people.
people
And
believe it.
like people in my that I love and care about, they think that too. And I have to really be able to explain to them, the model minority myth and use examples without offending them. And,
Who
it's
cares if you offend them? Who cares?
I
Who
cried. No.
cares? Who
But
cares if they're
but
offended? It doesn't
yeah,
matter. They need to know the truth. And if they are going to turn their a blind eye to the truth, then they're on the wrong side of history.
right,
Because
they
the
are.
tide is turning. The
The
reckoning is
time.
happening
Mm-hmm.
already. People are
Mm-hmm.
realizing that Asians are white adjacent, and they use the same tools that white people do to look down on others and their own kind
Mm-hmm.
too. Other Southeast Asians that are
Mm-hmm.
darker.
Right. I think even in my own personal experience when I was in China, I had the privilege to study abroad, and I felt like I was not accepted as a Chinese even because I was born in America, which I totally believe. There's this whole other, identity crisis sometimes with Asian Americans who, if you try to go back to your own mother, whatever that is, which is weird because it's like, well, we're born here, we're born in America. It's like this loss of identity where we don't know if we should go back to Asia and understand that heritage and background more, or be more Americanized, and even sometimes act more American or white, if you will, to be accepted. And that I've personally experienced. Some of my friends when I was studying abroad too, the Asian Americans were like, we're not even accepted in China, nor are we accepted in America. So that's why the term Asians dash American is very, that's who we are. Like they talk about this from people even when they first immigrated here too, especially with higher racism. Um, but that leads me to my next question is, you know, how I'm very interested in your experience, and have you ever, I'm sure, battled with both identities, whether it's in the Black community or the Asian community, and um,
I have.
what I can only imagine. And how has that been now with everything that we're having, even conversations,
Well,
talking about.
what I was talking about before, which is that anti-blackness is in the Asian community. And
Mm,
to really understand that and have the conversation and not sort of just be like, yeah, it's there. You're right. Okay, well, no. Why is it there? Why? How did it get there? How can we get rid of it? Because it's one thing to say, yeah, it's there. We need to do something about it. But it's one thing to really realize the source of where it's coming from and end the
mm-hmm,
source. I do have
right.
hope in the younger generations. I do,
Mm-hmm,
because
mm-hmm.
they are much more educated about these
They're more
issues,
malleable.
and there is more proximity to people of color through
Mm-hmm,
technology that we've
mm-hmm,
never had before. So
right.
those ideas that sort of the older generation places on them, they're like,
Mm-hmm,
no, I like all these different kinds of cultures, and I'm experience all these things through
mm-hmm,
YouTube and TikTok, and I find that is false. What you're saying to me from the top down, the generation down, is just that's not true. It's not, because I see it everywhere. I could
mm,
talk about you know, uh, and I could talk about how for me, growing up in a white and Asian neighborhood, I did, like a lot of people were telling me how to be black, that we're not black,
mm. Wow.
and where does that come from?
Mm-hmm,
It comes from the representation of black people. They're like, Ryan, you're not black because you don't speak ghetto, and
mm,
you don't wear baggy clothes, and you skateboard and prefer that over basketball. And so it's like that because they're looking at the world through a lens that is so small. The
right.
black people they know are Kobe Bryant or the criminal that they saw on TV, and that's it,
Mm-hmm,
or the football player,
mm-hmm,
and that's it. And
mm-hmm,
why I'm hopeful that times are changing is because of YouTube, because of TikTok, because of all these social media sources. The younger generation is seeing so much color and
mm-hmm,
so many different kinds of people expressing themselves in so many different kinds of ways. They're not, their mind isn't structured in the way that maybe ours was, or the older generation was growing up in America, where these ideas of stereotypes were spoon fed into our mouth.
yeah.
you know
I I agree for sure. But I am also worried for the younger generation because there are still people out there who are young and getting fed off of their parents these wrong ideals about being racist and that white is, better. And I do see them on TikTok, and I'm not very, big user on TikTok, but I am worried. But I do have hope also because of the Black Lives Matter movement and how much of a, everyone's just being aware. And it's like you said, we need to be on the right side of history. And for those who aren't, are going to be chastised. And we
Correct.
should make it a trend, right? Like, unfortunately, this is a cancel culture, a trend culture, but that's why I'm doing this, is that to encourage a trend of what's right, And like you said, I think even our generation, uh, there is still hope. We're still considered young. I believe I'm still young, but it's doing this, and whether
I
in what
said younger. I didn't say we weren't young. I said younger generation.
I believe we're young. I know,
Yeah,
but
I'm
yes,
young.
our generation and
Sure.
younger, it is kind of like we are kind of starting, these. breaking of generational pain and racism, because I do believe that happens in all sectors, whether it's mental health, whether it's pain from our generational heritage family, you know, or whether it's racism that we were born to listen to our parents talk about, you know. So I do believe that our offsprings, I hope it really is up to us to teach our, I mean, if I get kids, but to teach our generation about, and the generation next, that this is not right, you know, that we can't, you know, I'm always kind of like, what can we do in a bigger scale? But that stresses me out and gives me anxiety. So it's like, if we look at this in a smaller scale, you know, how can we encourage? This is like a small scale in itself, is to encourage society and, you know, in our way of controlling our own narrative, not controlling, but just being genuine. That's why I'm doing this, is to like talk about and have these comfortable, awkward, very like in your face conversations about what you're doing, and giving this and posting this to the Asian American community, whatever community, so they know it's like, hey man, like this is the conversation starts, but the action is, you know, comes after that, whether it's voting too, and constantly being pushing. It's so tiresome, and I know you are probably feeling the same. You know, it's always like we have to be so, like, we got to use our energy to like fight for this, whereas some people don't. It's like, oh, you know, white privilege. It's like, you know, you're kind of making a big deal out of nothing, but it's like, no, you don't see it. It's like, it's frustrating. Even for an Asian, we have our own stereotypes too. And the fact that I'm doing this is because I don't want to be a quiet Asian. I want to speak up. I want to be in your face. I'm tired of that BS too. Like, stop making me some kind of super sexualized Oriental person, you know, like, um, and you know, feminism is another thing too. So the frustration, I think, for not just Black but people of color are there. But I will admit that the Black community has first and foremost gone through the most and had kind of received that, you know, at the bottom of everything, you know. And now people hopefully are more woke and aware of that.
I,
So,
I personally don't like to, you know, talk about it in a way that's sort of like we've gone through worse, because
mm,
I mean, even if it's true, because the oppression Olympics argument becomes a thing, and then people are
yeah.
like, well, we suffer too, and what about us? And it's like, I go back to education. If you don't even know what your people went through in this country, you
Hmm.
can't have that. You can't even have that discussion. You can't,
Hmm.
because I've posted about anti-Blackness in the Asian community on many an Asian group, and overwhelming support, but there are so many uh, commenters that say racist things. You
Hmm.
know, they use whataboutism, like, okay, well, you're talking about anti-Blackness in the Asian community. What about anti-Asian sentiment in the Black community? And it's like, okay, you know, maybe that's there, but is it systemic? Are Black people teaching their kids that Black is, you know, darker skin is bad, and that Black people are thugs and criminals?
Hmm.
Yeah, or Asian people are thugs. We're not doing that. It's not a systemic issue, and it's not just Black people that are attacking Asians over COVID. You know, my family was attacked by,
Oh,
you know,
wow.
verbally attacked by people, and they weren't Black. Like, it's not
Mm.
just Black people. So when people say stuff like that, I'm like, oh, that's just anti-Blackness in the Asian community showing its face. That's what that is. When I tell you about my experience as an Asian person,
Hmm.
Asian and Black person experiencing anti-Blackness from my own people, and your reaction is not like, whoa, you're a fellow Asian and you're going through this. We need to protect you and make sure that doesn't happen. But instead, your reaction is like, well, what about Asians? You don't look Asian. How do you even know the Asian experience? You know,
Yeah.
that's a problem. That's a problem. So it's
Yeah.
not about being woke or saying that you're woke, or like that, you know, oh, we need to attack. It's about really knowing how to attack this. How are we going to attack this? And to know how we're going to attack this is to know our history and
Mm.
where the divisions stem from. and
Right.
debunking all these myths that make us feel like we're separate. And that, and specifically for me, because I know, you know, how Asians do treat Black people. And it's
Hmm.
not just macroaggressions. You know, it's like, well, were you beaten by Asians? Like, what are you talking about, anti-Black? It's like, that's not what anti-Blackness is. It's not just getting beat up by somebody. It's
Hmm.
microaggressions. You know, when I was
Hmm.
growing up, a lot of my Asian friends called me the N-word repeatedly, and not even in like a derogatory way. They thought they
Mm.
were just like, "Yo, hey, you're my nigga," like, you know. And I'm like, "Yo, don't say that,
I'm so
because you
sorry.
can't say that.
Hmm.
You're not Black." And it's like, well, you know, I'm Asian too, so like, you know, why can't I say that with you? It's like, you're not Black. And why are you putting me in a position where I have to prove it to you that you can't say it? Why do you want to say that word?
Hmm.
Why can't you put yourself in the hot seat and ask yourself why you want to say it so bad when Black people have told you not to say it and that it's hurtful? Why are you convincing your one Black friend, your token Black friend, that you can say it? What is that about? You know, we have to get to the bottom of those issues too,
Yeah.
because they know they're not supposed to say it, but they still do say it. You know, and that's not just Asian people. That's everybody that's not Black. There is this just fascination with that word, and that is one of the many that's honestly probably considered a macroaggression, but that's one of many micro and macroaggressions that we have to weed out. and
Hmm.
and Asian people and Latino people and people of color and LGBTQ people need to really listen
Hmm.
to each other.
Yeah.
We need to listen to each other's experiences and not really compare or like say which one is worse. I mean, if you're asking me, like, the Black experience is the worst. The Black, probably LGBTQ experience is the worst. And I will say that, especially Black women. It is our
Hmm.
duty to uplift those voices at the bottom. But we have to realize that the bottom was created by this system that we live in. So we have to even understand the system. And we have to put our people of color, LGBTQ people, into the political arena so that we actually do have a voice. You know, we have to get there too.
Right.
We
For
have to
sure.
get, and we have to get ourselves into the medical field,
Yes.
where there are huge discrepancies. You know,
Hmm.
of Black people dying from the same issues and the same, you know, or from malpractice at a disproportionately higher rate. And why is that? Why is that? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
We have to find the answers to these questions. We cannot just sit here and talk about Black Lives Matter, because yes, you can get and grab a sign and write some shit on a sign and say Black Lives Matter. But if you're not actually doing things, we want you though. Come, please.
Right.
We want you. We want as many bodies as you can out there. It was a beautiful thing. Been a beautiful thing protesting, you know, and seeing so many people of color and hella white people screaming Black Lives Matter till they don't have a voice
Hmm.
anymore. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. But it does not end there, because for me as a Black person in America, this has happened so many times. It
Mm.
becomes a trend and everyone's like, yay. And this is the biggest trend that we've ever had, of so many people coming together and marching for Black Lives Matter. But if you just follow a trend, you're no better than anybody else. If you do not
Right.
continue to fight, if you don't continue to keep fighting for us and yourself, because
Hmm.
what people need to realize through history is that, like, the Civil Rights Act was started by Black people, and
Hmm.
you know, MLK led that charge and got the Civil Rights Act signed, but that benefited everybody, not just Black
Right.
people. It benefited
Agreed.
everybody,
Totally
you
agreed.
know? So what people need to understand is that when we say Black Lives Matter, we are really saying all these people's lives. And I hate that.
Hmm.
I hate saying that. I hate all lives matter, because it's always used as a sort of a counterpoint to Black Lives Matter.
Hmm.
But it's really not. Really, sure, all lives matter. But if Black lives don't matter, all lives don't matter. And if Latino lives don't matter, all lives don't matter. And if POC's lives don't matter, Asian lives don't matter, LGBTQ lives don't matter, then no one's life really matters.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally agreed. I do think that, and I feel that it's more than just talking and doing things too, having these conversations. That is why I also believe that voting, I look at all these protests and it is such a wave, such a movement. And it really does make a difference between, you know, choosing the right people in power. You know, we have that hopefully um, movement to be able to vote the right people into power. And that's why I feel that, you know, I wasn't necessarily saying like, oh, you know, one is less than community than the other. It's more of,
Yeah. No.
you know, it's like I'm saying I'm respecting and giving like politically correct, like I'm respecting the Black community because first and foremost, the Black community experienced it first.
I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when I say it, it's different than when you say it.
Okay.
Because you are full Asian and Asian looking, whatever the fuck that means. I'm Black,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the times when I talk about Black struggle, I'm met with counterpoints of like, okay, well, what about other people's struggles? And it's like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
I guess I
Right.
can't talk about it in that way, even though
Mm-hmm.
it's true, you know, with everybody. But I probably will continue to do that. You know what I mean? Because now what I'm realizing is that Black people can talk in a way that we've never talked before. And people are actually going to listen to us.
Listen.
People are going
Right.
to listen to us because so many people are organized around Black people and our rights, you know, because it's
Mm-hmm.
affecting their dollars. That's why all these people are rushing, all these companies and conglomerates are rushing to say Black Lives Matter. But it's very clear in their responses what if the, you know, how it's very clear in their words whether they're actually an ally or whether they're just
Mm.
saying that shit to protect their
Right.
dollar and
Oh yeah.
to protect
Their
their business,
company,
you know.
right? Oh yeah, totally believe. And I've experienced that too, where I'm questioning you know, because you can't just be commenting on how a company or whatever entity is anti-racism if certain you have to embrace everything as a whole. You know, if you look at the company, actually, I saw an article. Somebody comprised an article of all these Hollywood executives in ABC, Warner, um, everywhere, NBC, you know, and the executives all, you know, somebody did that. They put the work together, and when you see it, it's predominantly Caucasian, you know, so it
Not
goes
I'm not
back.
surprised,
Yeah.
not surprised at all. That's just how this world, this I want to say world because it's true, but let's just focus on American society. That's how America works. They have say and they have, you know, I was talking to my friend and it's just like white people can go to a protest and be completely outnumbered and say all lives matter and wear their make America great again sign and say
Mm-hmm.
racist shit because the white privilege they have is their sense of community and they walk around with that sense of community wherever they go. But
Mm.
POC do not have that. We need an actual
Yeah,
community to back
yeah, we
us up.
do.
Black
Mm-hmm.
people need an actual community to
Mm-hmm.
back them up, to back them up, you
Yeah,
know? And
agreed.
what we're experiencing now is sort of a turning of the tables. And a lot of Black people feel like, you know, this is momentary because with Trayvon Martin, momentary. Oh my God,
Mm.
outrage. And then, okay, we forgot about it. You know, Ferguson, outrage, and then we forgot about it, you know?
Right.
And Tamir Rice, outrage. Breonna Taylor, outrage, and forget about it. Sandra Bland, outrage, forget about it. And I could go on for thousands upon thousands of
Mm-hmm.
names. Black people are
Mm-hmm.
tired of
Mm.
constantly shouting and our words just being lost in the wind. And now that our words aren't being lost in the wind, our people are listening, we're not holding back. I'm not holding
Don't
back.
hold back.
I'm not
Nope.
holding back. I'm going to
Good.
say what I need to say unfiltered. And if it applies to the Asian community, I'm going to say it to the Asian community. If it applies to other, you know, other communities, I'm going to say it to the other community. And if I'm going to say it to my own community too, you know, because anti-Blackness is everywhere. It affects
Mm-hmm.
all of us. And it is a disease that the system has
Yeah.
created and spreads like wildfire, you know.
Right.
And BLM is not just about police brutality and
It's a
defunding the
system.
police. It's
Yeah.
about systemic racism in
Yep.
all of its forms, every
Mm-hmm.
single aspect of systemic racism. You know, it's for, you know, my friends that work on Wall Street or my friends that work for engineering companies and their voice is silenced because they are a minority in their company. And that goes for Black
Mm-hmm.
people and Asians and people of color
Right.
too. That goes for LGBTQ people too. There is a fear.
Yep.
There's a
Yeah.
fear that is in all of us when we're in predominantly white spaces, that if we speak up, if we say the right thing, if we stand up for ourselves and say
Mm-hmm.
the right thing, that we will be
Wow.
ostracized and taken out of our positions of power, that we will lose
Mm-hmm.
money because we live in a white system that is perpetually putting us down. And
Right.
the closer that we get to whiteness and what it represents is success.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we almost have to erase our culture and abandon our culture, or adapt to
Yeah.
their view and their stereotypes of what our culture is
Mm-hmm.
in order to succeed. And we're done with that shit.
Yes, we are.
I'm done with
I
that shit. You
I
should be
find it,
done with that shit too.
I'm so tired of it too. Yes, especially when we're in Hollywood, which is, when the stories and the narratives are completely off. And I am glad you are so honest about how you feel and what needs to be done. Because honestly, I never talked about these issues before too. And I thought I was the only one that felt
You
this way
got
as an
it.
Asian.
You
I
got it.
thought it was,
Yeah.
and I had this, I thought I envy the Black community because culturally you guys are more loud, which is in a good way. I see it, but the Asians, that's why I hate that we're seen as like the quiet ones, and I don't want to do where I'm tired of it too, and angry and frustrated
I know
of
exactly how you feel because I was raised in an Asian
yeah.
community by my Asian side of the family. I saw my dad around, but my Black family, all of them lived in the South. And I see them
Oh
once a year.
wow.
So
Yeah.
the way that I was raised was that way. It was like,
Mm,
very strong, hardcore emphasis on education.
right.
Don't cause a conflict. Use the system to your benefit.
Yes.
Asians are very powerful. We are. We are very powerful. We use the system. We used the system and succeeded in it, and it wasn't for us. You
Mm.
should be proud. Asians should be proud of how far we've made it. You know, they shouldn't feel
I
guilt. They shouldn't feel guilt. But at this moment in time, it is our job as Asians to speak up. We
right.
cannot, and it's like when you speak, what people
Mm-hmm.
need to understand is that like when Asians speak up for BLM, they are speaking up for themselves. It is not about like, what about Asian struggle? No, you are a part of us.
Yes.
You're a part, not
Mm-hmm.
just me because I'm Blasian, but you are
No,
part of
no,
the
no.
BLM movement just like
Right.
everybody else.
Right.
Black people, we want all of you to come with us.
Mm-hmm.
And we're gonna fight this shit together. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you see BLM, when Asian people or non-Black people see BLM and their initial response is like, well, we're suffering too. It's like you're letting the system brainwash you and the
Right.
system is winning.
Yep.
Because you don't see the joint struggle that we both share. And
Right.
supporting us supports
Mm-hmm.
yourself
Yes.
and
And that,
debunks the system. Makes it
right.
better for all of us. Makes it more equal for all of us.
Absolutely.
And I do want to say, going off of what you're saying about, the Asian culture being, quiet, that is also a tool because you don't necessarily have to fight the fight being like extremely vocal. You can do it in other ways.
Mm.
You can infiltrate these I say infiltrate, but you can infiltrate
Infiltrate.
these institutions and
Mm-hmm.
which we already have. We're all up in these universities. Please.
Oh, yes.
We're all up in these universities. So
Mm-hmm.
that is also power. And if you can sneak in your, equal rights for all and BLM in there in those spaces and come together as Asians to do that, that is how we fight the system.
Right.
And I don't, I talk about anti-Blackness in the Asian community as a fellow Asian, like this is a problem we need to solve. Not as
Mm-hmm.
like, I denounce my Asianness because
No.
you guys treated me so badly. No, I am proud to be Asian. I'm very, very, very proud in my Asian blood, and I do not denounce that shit at all. But if I see a problem in the community as an Asian, and I talk to you as a fellow Asian or my fellow Asians about it, I would expect them, if they really do accept me and understand my struggle, that we will work together to fix this issue and
Mm-hmm.
not sort of like, deflect or detract or say, what about this or what about that? No, fix that shit. And I'm going to put my fist up, and anybody who tries to attack Asians too, they're going down. So don't act like because I'm calling anti-Blacks in the Asian community that I don't stand up for my fellow Asians, because that's not true at all.
Mm-hmm.
I just felt like I had to say that, but
No, that is beautifully said because that's what needs to be heard. And these are the conversations why I bring them up so that they can be recorded, so that people can play and hear and listen, and they don't have to be at a higher up chair to be able to talk and express how they feel and what needs to be done. And that's why
My mom's up in here. I just want to say that my mom's in here.
your mom.
Yeah,
Hi, mom.
my Asian mom, my Chinese mom. Shout out to my mom.
Oh, your
Yeah.
mom's in the chat. I
No,
thought she was
she's
in
in
the
the chat. She
room.
just waved. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, but
At least your mom
I
supports.
I don't know if you read the article that I wrote that I posted on Subtle Asian Traits that Nextart shared about sort of my experience as a Blasian in the Asian community and calling out anti-Blackness for what it was and not dancing around the issue, you know? Um,
I read some of your articles, but we
yeah,
do
but
have about like 7 minutes, just saying.
okay. So let me just
But
finish this thought. Let me
no,
finish the
no,
thought.
no. I'm just saying because I would love to. Maybe we can do part two.
Yeah. I felt like I needed to say those
Hmm.
words in that way to force the conversation. Do you know what I mean? Force,
Hmm.
Asians who are very like quiet and avoid conflict. I had to force them with those, accusatory words to make them pick
Hmm.
a side. Most
Right.
people overwhelmingly were like supportive. Obviously, the ones that spoke were supportive, but there's probably a lot of Asians who saw that and were like, "I'm angry, but I'm not gonna express it," you know.
Mm.
And then there were the racist ones who just said some wild racist things, called me the N-word, and then I'm just
Oh
like,
my
okay,
gosh.
see, you're proving my point. It exists. So thank you.
Yeah.
We need to root it out of our community, you know?
Yeah, and this takes a whole system of education, like you said, of undoing. And that's why I'm like, I think it'll take generations
Yeah.
to undo.
But it,
So
it doesn't have to.
it
It
doesn't
doesn't
have
have
to
to.
if we make
It
more
doesn't
noise.
have to.
That's why we're
If
here.
if our voices are heard, if you're in
Mm,
these streets or you're talking to your people or your family and you're like, yo, what you're saying is just wrong. It's just wrong.
mhm.
And it's really hard to talk to Asian parents and tell them that they're wrong because,
Oh yeah.
we live in sort of like respect for our elders is so important.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
almost in like a like no matter what,
Offensive,
if I
dishonorable.
tell you this pen is a
Yeah.
banana, it's a
Yeah.
banana. Like that's how
Yeah.
I know how Asian
Yes.
parents are.
Yes.
But you have to call it out because
Hmm.
there's so much more at stake here,
Mm.
and that's what's so sad is that's just true, it's
It
just
is. It is true, and it is hard, and it is fighting an upward battle that has a lot to do with, I think, being Asian American and also knowing how to code switch, if you will, between the Chinese Asian culture, the traditional Asian culture, versus the independent American culture. And
here's
that,
yeah, that's
hmm
true. Here's
yeah.
my suggestion for that is fuck code switching. We need to act the way that we act and not capitulate to the normalcy of whiteness in this country. You know, name
Yes.
your kid. My uncle was like, I don't want an English name. My name is Chang, and that's what
Mm.
my name's gonna be. And if you
Yeah.
have a problem with that and make fun of me for it, I don't give a fuck. That's my name. I'm not gonna name myself David or Andrew. Like I'm going to keep my original Chinese name, and
Mm.
that I admire so much
Mm.
because so many of us capitulate
Yeah.
to that idea.
Oh
And we
yeah.
don't need to, or codes. No, no. Like Ryan, the director of Black Panther. If you hear him
Mm.
talk, he doesn't try. He's one of the biggest directors in the industry right now. Ryan Coogler. When you hear him
Hmm.
talk, he's not trying to sound professional or white. He's from the Bay, and he speaks however he wants to speak. And I respect
Mm.
him so much for that. And everyone needs to sort of all POC. Everyone needs to follow that lead and be who they are so we can
Hmm.
take over this shit because like this whole system is the whole system of code switching is built around that idea is that you need to change in order to be successful, but you fucking don't. Just be yourself. Say the things that you need to say. I know we're running out of time.
No, well said. We got like it's 9:26. We got like 3 to 4 minutes. So anybody got questions out there? Ryan's so passionate, and I do admire that passion and your drive because that's what we need in order for people to hear and change and to be able to do things and not just, like you said, talk about it.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but I really appreciate your truthfulness because this is what we need, and being able to have these really in your face conversations. Um, But does anybody have questions, or maybe we can read through some of, like, there was a lot of comments. So many of you
Someone,
guys joined. Thank you so much for joining.
someone said,
Um,
someone said, do you identify with your Asian side? Yes. I think I answered that already, actually, indirectly. I do. 100%. I am Asian and African American, and even though the world sees me maybe a certain way, I don't care. I am Asian and African American.
and that's great. I know, really, I think that's why I wanted you to talk about this, is to hear how it feels to be of these two
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
heritages,
yeah.
And wow, so many friends joined.
Thank you, friends.
Yeah.
Oh, question. What do you think about the Hollywood representation movement of BLM? How should everyone move forward with that movement specifically? I think they should never stop shouting it and and put all in their email signages, put Black Lives Matter. And
wow, no filter.
eventually
No,
it'll
that's
keep
what you need.
on building, and it would be like, all Black Lives Matter, all Black Lives Matter, all Black Lives Matter, trans
Yes.
lives matter, LGBTQ lives matter. You know what I mean? And it'll start a movement, but we can't stop saying it. How much time do we have? Is the timer counting down yet?
No.
Doesn't
I
the
think
timer
we've
come up
got
on the
like
thing?
three. Yeah, you maybe got like 3 minutes.
Okay. I say, how should everyone move forward with that movement specifically? Don't stop saying it. Don't stop speaking up. Don't get
Yep.
lost in sort of like the memes and the funny shit, and not continue to carry this message and continue to do the work and educating yourself about the system and how it divides us, and listen to James Baldwin, and listen to Malcolm X, and listen to MLK, and listen to all these activists, all POC activists across the board.
Now you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, and all these activists have always been saying this, and you need to listen to it every day, because it's an education that unfortunately, because of our shitty ass education system that doesn't teach us our history, we have to put it upon ourselves to learn that,
Right.
or suffer the consequences. How about the multiple movements? How to tackle the goals one at a time without getting overwhelmed. Like I said earlier, the Black Lives Matter movement is, even though it's called Black Lives Matter, is for everyone. It is a step in the right direction to make all of us more equal. You know what I mean? If you look, and
I believe that.
Yeah,
it's not just one race, it's everyone, guys, and that's why it's so important.
Everyone. It helps everyone. And also, you see with the BLM, like when I marched, there was everybody out there.
Yep.
There was all different kinds of people. There was trans people, there was LGBTQ, all those people. There were so many different POC, Asian Americans for BLM, trans for BLM. We're all coming together through this movement. So this whole movement is for everybody, because it's bringing everybody together, and it's showing us how undeniably powerful we are when we come together. And once we come together, we can solve all those issues together. But we have to come together first. And if this is the way that we come together, that's how it is. That's what it's going to be. Yeah, don't sit it out. Everyone's
absolutely. You have 10 seconds left.
Thank you, everybody.
Maybe we can thank everybody.
Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you for everything. All right, 3 seconds. Thank you guys so much for joining. We're going to have another one next week.